In the 2017-18 NBA season, James Harden had one of the best seasons of his entire career, averaging 30 points and 9 assists while leading the Houston Rockets to the #1 seed in the entire league. He won his first MVP after being named the runner-up the previous year when he lost to his former teammate Russell Westbrook. What's up guys, it's Six Man Sports, and today we're going to be talking about the fall of James Harden, who went from a perennial MVP candidate to a playoff choker. So let's talk about it. James Harden then in the 2018-19 season went on a very historic run. That season he averaged 36 points per game and had a 32 game streak where he scored 30 points in a row, and the game where he lost the streak he scored 28. And this such streak is the second largest in NBA history, only trailing the great Wilt Chamberlain, who broke many unbeatable records. So James Harden had a great season, like I said, averaging 36 points, but he did not win MVP, and that award went to Giannis. Then the front office decided the Chris Paul and James Harden duo wasn't really working out after 2 seasons, so they decided to trade Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook, and they had 1 season together. That was the 2019-2020 season, also the bubble season, and that season Harden averaged 34 points, but they get bounced in the second round by LeBron and the Lakers, who end up winning the championship that year. Alright, so let's do a recap of the last 4 years. Harden has for sure established himself as a top 5 player in the league, if not top 3, and he's been top 3 in the MVP voting for the last 4 seasons, and he's won it once, and he's been a runner-up twice, and he's finished 3rd once. So he's clearly been great the last 4 seasons. This is where things start to go downhill for James Harden and his career. He just hasn't been the same player since the end of the bubble. So let's talk about it. So, we're at the start of the 2020-2021 NBA season, and Rockets management decides to make a move where they trade Russell Westbrook to the Washington Wizards in return for John Wall, and pretty much this deal is just a deal where they swap 2 massive contracts, as both players are on pretty big deals. So, at this point, James Harden and John Wall are now teammates, and this is where James Harden just doesn't play as good. It was clear the Rockets were not good enough to win an NBA championship this year. They were kind of one of those teams, if Harden stayed, that would be like good enough to make the playoffs, but nothing more than that. And Harden, a guy who averages 30 about every year, was starting the season averaging around 25, and it was kind of clear that he wanted out, and so yeah, he was out of Houston, and he got traded to the Brooklyn Nets to form that big 3 with Kyrie and KD, and here he actually played his role pretty well, and he was mainly a playmaker for this team. As he's playing with KD and Kyrie, this team is a team where he's not expected to score as many points as he did in Houston, so he did a great job for them as a playmaker, and he did play his role well. Although ultimately they did lose to the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 7 because KD's foot was not behind the line. I think this is probably the farthest or furthest the Brooklyn Nets can ever get in the playoffs with this team, and that's really what happened. I'm not sure if they'll even go further with KD and Kyrie together. So now we're at the start of the 2021-2022 season, and because of Kyrie's vaccination status, he can't play any home games at Barclays Center, which means James Harden and Kevin Durant are going to have to pick up the load and help the Nets team for at least however long until Kyrie is out. His points are going down, his shots attempted are going down, his assists are even down, or they're about the same. Like this season with Brooklyn, he averaged 22 points, 10 assists. Like he's just not the same player. He just can't take over ISO, and part of the reason is the fouls. They're just not calling some of the offensive fouls that he used to get as many points, and while it's hard to say because James Harden was a really good player. He's still a good player, just not as good as he was in his Houston days. It's hard to just say all of this is mainly because of the fouls. I'll also admit it's also obviously because he's playing with star talent. And the season's not going too well in Brooklyn. The team is losing games. They went on a 3-17 stretch. Kyrie does come back, but Kevin Durant misses a big chunk of the season due to injury. So yeah, the team's not doing well, and Harden kind of wants out, and people are saying his main destination is Philly. That's his #1 spot. So the trade does happen. He does get traded to Philly at the trade deadline for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and a package of picks. So although this trade does look good for both teams, with Ben Simmons not playing for the Nets, that's a big loss for them. And with James Harden definitely underperforming for the Sixers, that's also not a good trade for them. In 21 games with the Sixers, James Harden averages 21 points, on 40.2% from the field, which is the worst of his career dating back to his rookie season. So he's not shooting the ball well. But Embiid is having an MVP type season, and Philly goes into the playoffs against the Raptors, who are big underdogs, and they have a 3-0 lead, but they do manage to come out and win that series 4-2. So that series against the Raptors, Harden averages 19 points, which is third on the team behind Embiid, obviously, and Tyrese Maxey, who actually steps up a lot in this series. So he averages 19 points and 10 assists, so at least he's playmaking and giving the ball to his other players on the team. And Tobias Harris actually stepped up pretty well this series, averaging just 18 points, so just like one below Harden. So Harden is like a third or fourth option really on this team, depending on how it goes. But Embiid does get injured in that game 6, and he won't play the first 2 games or first 3 games in the Miami series, which we're going to talk about next. So the first couple games when James Harden is literally the main star of the Sixers and Joel Embiid is out, he needs to step up. I mean, Tyrese Maxey is a good scorer, but he's very young. Like, he's only 21 years old. He's not experienced. James Harden, you're experienced. You're the MVP. You've done great stuff in the moments. You've led teams to the Western Conference Finals. You've even been to an NBA Finals. You need to step up, right? You averaged 18 points per game this entire series, and that last game 6, he shot 2 shots the entire second half of the game. And a team that needed you to step up, you didn't step up for them. Joel Embiid was playing amazing through his injury. Sure, he only averaged 20 points, but he's like playing through a really bad injury the last like 4 or 5 games. So you need somebody to step up, and if Tyrese Maxey is the leading scorer for your playoff series, he's cool, but he is not that type of guy yet, and James Harden had to step up, which he did not. And that is the main reason the Sixers lost the series, is because James Harden, his shooting percentage didn't go up. He's getting 40 minutes a game, but he's not able to produce in the 40 minutes per game. He averaged 18 points, which is worse than the first series, and he didn't even play make the series, averaging only 7 assists. But part of that is obviously Embiid not playing the first 2 games. So that's where we're at right now. The Sixers losing in 6 to the Miami Heat, and they're out of the playoffs. And this is a big offseason for both James Harden and the Sixers management. I mean, they both have some big decisions to make. So Harden has one of 3 options. I mean, he has a player option, but he has 3 options on what he can do with the player option. He can accept and be a free agent at the end of the 2022-2023 season, and he has one more season in Philly. He can decline and be a free agent for this season, like he can choose what team he wants to play for, or he can sign an extension for like a 4-year extension. So he really has 3 options on what he wants to do. But for a 32-year-old, I'm not sure if they want to sign him to a 4-year extension for sure, because he's already declining so much, just 2 years past his like prime seasons, and who knows how bad he'll be if he keeps going at this rate in another 4 years. So if I'm James Harden, I'm probably gonna either accept or decline. Obviously, teams have more salary cap next year, so if he accepts it this year and rides one more year out with Philly and tries to win another, or tries to go for the championship with Joel Embiid, the teams have more salary cap, so he has a lot more options on where he can sign, and more teams will be willing to sign him next summer. It just depends on how he does this upcoming season. Or he can decline the player option and become a free agent and sign with a team that needs him. So he really has a couple options on what he can do. We just have to wait and see. And I just want the prime James Harden to be back, because he was a monster, but he was like really dominant in a way we haven't seen in a really long time. So I just want to see James Harden play to that level. Who knows if he'll ever be back there, but James Harden, it's been a bad fall off since a 36 point per game scorer, like a perennial MVP candidate. James Harden has not been that at all recently. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know what other videos you want me to make, and here's some videos you guys should check out. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what videos you want, and bye.